Okay, so let's go. C'est bon, Baptiste? Okay, so we can start this day today with the tickets. I propose to try to take your subject, manage print queue, massively PDF background job. You can expose and we can share about this, and I share my feedback on it.
Yeah. So the main problem is FOP and print mechanism based on FOP with free marker file. I basically interactive task. When I click on a link, the document is created on the fly. The system creates a document on the fly. But in ERP on other system, we need to massively create a lot of PDF in something like a batch environment. So I need to create hundreds of invoices, PDF, and after maybe send by mail or store in a local storage or send in a bucket FTP or something like that, to share with other software, to share with customer, with supplier, so order confirmation, invoices, bill of material, technical sheet, all this. And is not, so in this business scenario, it's not comfortable to click and wait the PDF. And so I want to know if somebody achieve the same problem, the same issue, maybe in different circumstances, maybe invoice, maybe order, maybe confirmation, so on and so forth, to store locally, or maybe with my experience in mainframe or SAP, there's something like a print queue. The user can launch a lot of different queue, a lot of different print. The user can create a lot of PDF, and the create is created not on the fly but in background, and after is exposed in a specific something like a folder, print queue, that is not a folder because every PDF contains also a lot of metadata. For example, the priority of the print, the user who create the print, data of starting and ending creation, the number of pages. So I take a look on this table, or something like a table. I see this PDF with 400 pages and so on and so forth, and using this data visualization, I can click and open the PDF, but the PDF is not created on the fly, it's created before in background, because maybe the PDF need different database, different table, putting images on other stuff, and I want to take a look on my print queue, and maybe I see a print I have run it yesterday, and today is ready because it's a low priority print, and the system elaborate in the background without any hurry. Or this is the one of the topic we see in some system.
Okay, thanks. Some people want to react or share? I'm having trouble seeing the problem, because what you just described is the way I would have implemented it, which is jobs running. You said you can plan everything, you know, or you can
expect what documents you will need the day after. So with jobs that are planned the day before. I mean, one job that is planned daily or twice a day, that creates all the jobs that will actually create your documents.
Okay.
And then they are ready the day after.
Okay, but when the PDF, for example, when the PDF is created, maybe you use an asset event communication. What kind of entity, what kind of system can we use to manage not only the job but also the result of the job, and to share with the something like a queue related to the user with all the PDF? Maybe
each documentation generated by Ofbiz, you can inject it on the content system.
Yeah. Okay.
You generate on the fly or by services. First, if you need to end user result quickly, you can generate on the fly and push on the navigators, clients navigators. Or if it's a huge volume, you can generate it by a service and after put it on content.
Okay.
And like this, the user can retrieve the content. You can link the content to the user, or you can link to another entity for the functional context. And like this, he can retrieve his action.
Okay.
Depends really the volume that you need to trade, the type of document. If you have just one page, if you have 100 pages, if an invoice is a list of stock, each document is different. Each document have not the same. In example, if you have just generate one invoice, it's fast. But if you generate 100 invoice, the time for each, the sum of the time for each is huge.
Yeah.
So you need to change the vision.
Okay.
So each time we adapt, depends the document that we manage and the result that we manage.
Okay. So you suggest to use the content engine?
Yeah, exactly that we did on the project. Some users generate big reports.
That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, and at the beginning we generate fly, but with the time and the database grow, the user ask for the report.
Yeah.
We say, okay, we alert you by email, and when the report is available, an alert is sent, and the user can retrieve it on the personal page. So
user receives the link for links
to the content.
To the content for the
Okay.
So content is really useful for this. And I suggest to use not to put the document on the database, on the
URL.
share one point
Yeah.
in the system.
Maybe we create the PDF with a UID file name and put the UID file name as an URL in the content.
I think we can store the metadata in the database and the file on the file system, no?
Yeah.
That points
Yeah.
to the file. This was your metadata.
But to follow the ideas, I can share is exactly the same. For the management data volume, I think he can respond to your interrogation. We each volume of data. Example, 1 million of elements, and you want to operate to have only one result. If you use example service, typically, the time to create all is really sometimes too big, and you need to increase the timeout. But sometimes 2 hours maybe is not enough, and the system works, but you don't understand what it is. So with the time, we change your visions, and we used massively the service engine. So instead to create one services that do all, we try to split all, to find different some iteration that we can isolate. Like this. We create services to prepare. And so these services just prepare, and after create a lot of services that is create services, asynchronous services, and put it persistent.
What does it mean prepare for you?
Prepare, you have, this is an element.
Mm-hmm.
You want, typically, you have this element to create invoice. But you need to create 1 million invoice. It's really big. So you prepare this service, you take each order that you need to invoicing, and you assemble it. And for each, you create a service and you persist it.
Basically, the preparation service.
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, it should be any query.
Yeah.
I will correct my word is not the service, is the job instance.
Okay.
It's the job that is preparing.
Okay.
Doesn't do any query. It's supposed to be extremely fast, so that it can treat the
Like this, for 1 million element, maybe I have 1,000 job prepared, and after I can have different Ofbiz instance that grab the different job.
Okay.
And like this, we can share the charge. And finally, the advantage of this, prepare this is fast, and after is persistent. So if you have an Ofbiz that scratch, you can continue to run the big job.
Yes,
Have it.
it's easy to monitor.
Yes.
Easy to monitor.
Instead of this case, if this crash, you need to restart all. So you fragment all to be fast.
Okay. Merging the two ideas, we can create something like a job queue with a printer queue.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, using this system, and after using content to manage the real data, the link to the PDF, and the PDF stored in a specific.
Actually, the jobs you are planning,
Yeah.
you do whatever you want. So at the end of the job, you can print,
Yeah.
put in print queue, or
Yeah.
send the email, or do whatever you want.
So this vision is really helpful.
Yes.
We save your time many times.
Yes. Not only for PDF, but
Yes.
For every kind of
On
job.
the main project, we have some users that load a big catalog, really big. And at the beginning, we process on all, on one step, but each time they fall because out of memory and so on. So we switch and we decompose each line, we assemble, and after you start a job to be sure that we always switched, and the end user can see the movement of the catalog load.
Yeah, also because coming back to PDF is we need a lot of RAM, a lot of resources, the FOP processor, because it's created, I think, in RAM all the DOM, all the XML, but if you have a lot of resources, a lot of images, and it's quite huge to manage. So we use also not for Ofbiz project, but it's possible, I think, some very big print in LaTeX. Because we can manage PDF with hundreds and hundreds of pages with a lot of resources in with a very low resource consumption and very low effort. So because it's very fast, it's very effective. So if you think in the university we create documents with a lot of formulas, a lot of images, a lot of if you try to process it from command line, you create the PDF in 2 seconds, and it's very fast. Compared to FOP is not comparable for speed and
it's different kind of documents.
Yeah.
It's our presentation talks or
yeah, but if you want to see our ERP printing system is based on LaTeX, and we create catalog, we create invoice, we create order documents, so
we managed to create
technical sheet and
very structured documents with LaTeX. Okay.
Yeah.
The only problem with LaTeX that is there's not Java libraries to do that, so we have to create the text file and make a
Process externally.
an external process like scheduled with counter that process all the text file. So it's an external process.
Yeah, LaTeX is not born for this kind of use, but it can be useful because we use also a lot of barcode in the LaTeX file, barcode, images, any kind of information, table, multiple table, different report, business report, invoice, and so on and so forth. So it's quite, it's very fast. Yeah.
Very nice idea.
Yeah, it is not bad to think about using, because I don't want to put in the threshold our old LaTeX print, and so it's not bad to manage with this, calling an external service that render the PDF, and after coming back to the context and create the asset in the context and manage in a transparent way for Ofbiz user. It's quite strange, but we don't. So to convert all the LaTeX print in FOP is very different because it's a very different approach. A completely different approach.
Okay.
Nicolas, just a question. With your approach, is required to some changes on at service engineering level, or just a matter of I write a Java service that prepares and call all the other services?
Exactly. How we do that? In meantime, we have here Groovy services that collect and prepare each context. And after, when you call the service,
You call it like like run async.
Yes,
Okay.
you have a dispatcher.
Okay.
If I remember well, run async. The schedule service. My context. And
Yeah.
like this, Ofbiz creates on the jobs and blocks an instance of schedule services with the context. And after, it's a job puller that manage the job.
Also, you can also note that the context is all of your service context that will be persisted in database. So maybe think after some time, think about maybe purge routine.
So the
Use
main effort is on ensure that this is can be isolated. You can create for each items and isolate transaction.
So you slice the items and create the single context map for each async service.
Like
And
this.
how you decide how and when to slice the element, if they are 1 million or there are 10?
When the job crash,
When you have a problem 10 times, you start to think about
Okay, so you should have this kind of awareness. So you see, okay, this job cannot run in all in at once, and I need to split the domain. Okay.
in general, you have a complex algorithmic, and you have a loop on your services. Maybe you have two-hand difficulties, and if you analyze, sometimes you can isolate one or isolate two, and you before call the loop, you loop on the run async to isolate this operation.
Okay.
And sometimes you have big job and you fragment it directly, easily, because all is isolate and you can run by unit.
Yes, so the idea when you have a service that do multiple times the same thing, you can have will there be a user that will ask a lot of things? If it might be possible, so it might be a good way to cut the service into parts and to use the job system. If you don't have to get the results synchronously, because with this way you have to find a way to come back to the user to say, okay, it's done or it's a request, etc.
With the run async is not possible. So
No, you have to store somewhere that everything you planned are currently in progress, and each instance of the job say on its line, it's okay, I finished, it's okay, I finished, and you might have a service SECAP on the job to check if all the items are okay. If all the items are okay, you can inform the user or something like that.
so just trigger on the service. Just if the job is finished.
Yeah. Rating 1.
Other remarks or interrogation?
No, it's quite clear. I understood.
Okay, so I propose to close this subject
Yeah. Thank you.
and then continue.
Yes, I can. It's about the discussion, so I won't be the only one talking, I hope so. For our part, like I said yesterday, when we are using API to consume from other service provider, we decided to use communication event entity to store the calls, the payload, and adding a status to be able to plan the calls as a job, because our system do a lot of calls, and to store the answer of the call within the communication event content. With that, we have the visibility, the total visibility of every communication, of every API call we are doing to the outside. And same when we are offering API, when we received, we try to store the call we received and the status directly when we answer them okay or not okay. So it was a way to do. It's working. We are creating a lot of communication event records that might need to be cleaned in a way. So I wanted to know if you have some experience in that case. What are your practices? If you have some.
Well, I have a question here because I also have a system which needs to communicate with a legal entity from Romania. Basically, we need to send all invoices to a certain API system.
Okay.
And only invoices that are stored there are valid in Romania. So when we get an invoice from a supplier, we need to get it from that system. So this is an API communication. So basically, you send the invoice to the API and you call the API to get the invoice back. So you have a result of the API call. And I guess in this case, you would store the API call or just store the result of it, because the result is either an invoice or an error. So do you need both the call or just the result to store it?
Can you remind me what is the payload when you call the API? What kind of information you send?
You send the invoice or you receive it. Just get the
in which format? XML data, the
XML,
invoice? Yeah. And they send back to you a PDF or something like that?
Yeah. So let's just take the simple case when I send the invoice.
Yeah.
So I send the invoice XML and I get back the result, which is either an error, or a success code.
Okay.
Or actually, if it's success, I get the code, the index that I need to store in my database that I send the invoice.
Okay, and how do you retrieve the... No, you don't need to retrieve the invoice from the API after that.
I retrieve the received invoices.
Okay, during the API call. So for me, what's important, it's possible to have any issue, communication issue with the API, it's important to store the payload when you are doing the call and to store the results. To build trust with the API, because when there is an issue with them and they talk, you didn't send us that information, you have everything on your side, so no, I'm pretty sure I send you that and you answer that with that information. So with tracing everything, there is no doubt, there is no debate about what you were sending, etc. That's why we did it on this way, to avoid, it's not a state we're communicating with, it's other companies. And the war, where is the problem between them or between us, can be quite complicated. And so we need to build trust in ourselves, to be sure to answer that when they tell us, you didn't send that, no, it's here, we are sure about that. So we store everything.
How do you get a balance between this reliability and efficiency, because let's just say that I send the invoice 10 times, like I send the invoice, the server is down, I send it again, I need to change some names, I send it again, so the payload is stored like 10, 20 times for the
No.
same invoice, so the database grows pretty
No,
large.
no, because when you try to send the same invoice 100 times, it's always the same data you are trying to send. So our communication event as a status is prepared, and why to try to send and you get an error from the API, it's boost the status of the communication event. And our system will try again with the same communication event, the same payload. So you don't create more data for that.
Yeah, you don't duplicate.
So you try again until it works, or until a period when we say, okay, it's abandoned, and there is an alert to the support or something like that. But with that, you can. I think we did something to know how many trials we did by increasing account in somewhere in the communication event, and we can tell to the API owner that we try to contact you each time, and we didn't manage to. What is the problem? And it's okay with that. So
And does Ofbiz has out of the box capability to handle all these cases, or you have to enhance the existing communication event services, or you build up your own manager to handle this kind of retries on communication events?
I think out of the box capabilities are quite good as it is.
if I remember, we did contribute something. Yeah, because communication event is already working with email, the same way. The status, so you try to send with the it's very similar. The only thing we did that we did not yet contribute, the service set come event as API.
Yeah,
We
would require more work to be contributed more.
yeah. But we already contributed the Sencom event as SFTP or FTP, because before API we were sending file into a store bucket.
So you created a specific communication event type like FTP or API?
No, the same communication type. It's a contact make type that is like to the.
Okay.
So switching from the contact make, you say. No?
Sure, the communication type is the same. I don't think it's the same. I think the communication type is different.
Yeah, maybe.
So if it's a contact MAC, you are required to create the group of the entity you want to create, to send the API to.
Exactly. The communication event 2 is the state or the company you are sending something. You got all the info in there, and you put the good contact make selected for this company onto the contact make 2 into the communication event. And, okay. I agree with Gaetan, because we are filtering the communication event in our tool, in following tool, by type.
If you have different types, for monitoring it's easier.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, this kind of thing, because in our new implementation we have to think about this issue, because also in Italy we have to send all the invoices to the legal entity, like the electronic invoice.
Soon in France too. Soon, not yet, but soon.
In Italy it's mandatory.
Yeah.
We already do that with our actual ERP, and you can right now send the electronic invoice to different providers, and then they are responsible to send to the legal entity. But it's quite the same thing. So you have to call API, send FTP files, something like that. And in the new our new system, we will use XML and do the exact same thing. So I think that communication event will be a good strategy. Right now, for example, we develop external Java programs that read the data from the our legacy system that create the invoice object. So we read the invoice data, create the XML, for example, for a specific provider that has its own API, its own object, all different, and communicates the XML. And it responds back with error, this field is missing, this field, the state, the invoice is okay, so it's a similar way. And right now with a simple external Java program, what I do is I make the call synchronously, it responds back, I log the error, I log the payload, the initial payload, and I send a basic email to an internal user of the company that says, okay, this invoices has been processed correctly. Those gives an error because maybe a data is missing on the invoice in the database, and so it's quite basic right now. But because it's done externally and I do not have to persist. For now it's okay to have log file, but in the near future I'll have to do something like that.
I think it's an interesting case because if it becomes a standard in European countries, it can be something it contributed to in trunk to have something.
But the scheduler, that handles your calls, that manages the statuses, and resends if the status is failed. Is that out of the box, or what do you use as a scheduler?
Not out of the
No.
box, I think, but it's not something that would be complicated to set up, I believe. It is a service that will be planned, a job that will be planned daily or maybe twice a day, and it's a simple service that will check communication events that are to be sent with the specific status, for example.
Yeah, but you also need to pass the response and change the status based on the response code, which is different for different API calls.
Just for the first part, we duplicate the send email dated services that do basically the same thing. See the emails that are ready to be sent and try to send it. To send it, it's calling another service, send email, and send email are the specifics for the email. So the sendcom event by API we implemented could be contributed, and within the specific of this service, depending of the authentication type, depending on the contact match, you will have to implement the way to retrieve the information you have from the API call and store it to the communication event. I think we can build something general that can answer about that. But there will be specifics because we don't measure all the way the API are implemented in every state or company that provides this kind of API.
It's another question for you guys. You say that for the same payload you do not store another communication event. For example, you try to send that. Let's say, for example, that there is an error in the invoice data on the database, so the payload is different. So the first payload that you sent is wrong because some data is missing.
Yeah.
And so the user goes, edit the invoice and correct it, and then resend it again.
But
It has to be stored, a new payload.
You see that a user action has been done, you modify the invoice, and validating again the invoice will send a new COM event with a new invoice data. But the old COM event, try again, and will stop. It's you to decide when to stop. Maybe you link the communication event with the invoice and see that the invoice has been modified. So up automatically you will say this all the com events that are not sent already sent related to this invoice. I will cancel the com event, and then when I'm validating the modification of the invoice, I will generate a new communication event with a new payload.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's about the validation of the invoice that creates a
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
So this,
Hmm?
because the way I do that is with different statuses. So if I get a communication error, then it's a communication error status, and I try to resend it again multiple times. If I have an error in the parsing, I get an error like data wrong or something like that, and I put the status to data wrong, and then I don't try to send it again.
Okay. So
And
you
I
have
send a
a
new
specific
event.
status.
Yeah.
Yes.
Send a new event with a new payload.
Why you do not have a specific status for the different type of error that an API calls can have. For example, data wrong. So we simply have the status of the communication event.
For now, we have only basic status in communication event, and we have a specific status on the communication event to say, okay, it's a success since the communication has been well received by the API, but they send us an error, and we store the code and the error in the comment section of the API of the communication event, and our tool analyze the communication events that are success but have this kind of error, and we can filter group by and see what kind of error we have with the number of
Analyzing the comment section.
yeah, it's not great or not, but it's working. So it's a first step.
There should be an extension of something like API communication event, for example, in the future, where you can put specific feeds, for example, for call success. That is mean this, for example, the HTTP response to the endpoint is okay, so it's to 200, but the API itself make a response with an error. So
You can even imagine child communication events related to the original one, with a list of status that are HTTP code with a message behind that. We can imagine something like that. Yeah.
So usually API endpoints changes the HTTP status if the data is wrong. At least in my experience, I saw, for example, that if I put a wrong payload, it doesn't respond with 200 but with 500, for example.
Yeah, but
Usually, not always, is not the standard.
I have a provider that say, do not look HTTP code, look only on the comment. There is a code here.
Ah, okay.
And why? Okay. So yes, I agree with you. It's a best practice, but
It would be easy.
Yeah.
There is already have the HTTP code, so why don't you use it then?
exactly.
Okay.
So not anyone is perfect. So
You have to do parsing specific for that kind of provider that stores the code.
yeah. There are quite a funny story around some of the provider. Yeah.
Okay. No, I don't think that communication events are okay. They have to be maintained lean as an entity because they will grow up easily. But
Yeah.
I think that if it's a really supported feature, why not to use it?
Yeah, and what is nice with that is it allows what Nicola just described before to plan the API call. So if there is a process that needs to plan hundreds or thousands of calls, there's no problem. It's not the job sandbox that is planned, it's the communication event. And you can plan in the future. You can do whatever you want. So, and you even can do some dirty things like with the payload, modify the payload of the com event you received on the text part, because there was an error in our system integrating the API call from the provider, and to fix it, to make it work. Something like that. It's possible.
Yeah.
It's not great, but in some cases it's very useful.
If you want, I can share you how we manage the REST service. On the big project we have, we don't use the plugin REST from Ofbiz. We use out of the box, Ofbiz out of the box for the service engine, and we adapt some handler. So if you see, you have different URL for the services, like this, so I explain. Ofbiz naturally now can manage RESTful addresses. So if you check, you can call directly with the parameters on the URL. So we use it like that. Ouais, vas-y.
T'es sûr?
Bien sûr. Hein?
T'es sûr?
Il n'y a pas de données.
Ouais. Bon, ok.
Enfin.
Ok.
And we have a typical service type of services API to call standards of these services. And this logic, the event services here, if you check it, invoke dedicate services to manage some specific case. So is 90% of these standards with 10% modification. But we isolate in the new place, Java classes. So, and for the response, we irritate the standard JSON return with also some specific case. So it's really closer than the standard. And after, this is when somebody call us, but we can call them also. But the problem to call them, there is many different ways to connect an API, because some people use OAuth2, some people use NTLM, some people use password. So we need to adapt each time how Ofbiz connect an API, an external API. So when we have 1, 2, 3, you can manage it by hand. When we have 1,100, it's a little bit complicated. So we orientate it, we create a table. Where is it? We create an heritage of the contact make like postal address. We create the same for API address with some information of authentication, URL, password, client, secret, and some information that we need on some case we detect. Like this, we can configure the exchange, and when we create a new connection with a new partner, we just add it here. And like this, we can also, with contact make, put the contact make purpose to say, okay, it's a pre-production, it's a staging state, or it's a real production address.
Related to this, there is a different party in the system, for example. Related to this entity, for example,
Yes.
you have to send my data to a provider. I create the party, group, party, whatever,
Exactly.
in the database, and I associate this API address.
Exactly. And when my order arrives, and I say, okay, I need to push it by API, we check what party group, we check the API addresses, and call a standard system to say, okay, push the order.
Yeah. Using the client IDs they use, we identify the party group they are,
Yeah.
and that do the pass to
So
store things.
you work for them because they are at this time 13 connection, different connection.
Yeah, maybe a little less, but yes.
So nothing to share about this. I think we need to
See, we might the health check. We can talk about the health check of the API endpoints that are configured into pre-production production to stop trying to send API call to a provider that have their API endpoint that isn't available. Because if you need to send an invoice to the provider of the state and is not ready to receive, okay, we disable their contact make for 1, 2, 3 hours, or we send an alert and we wait until the health of the endpoint to contact come back to okay, and after that we enable the contact make and the thing. So we have a little job like that that parse every active API endpoint and try the else endpoint they have to provide to us to check if they are still okay.
For example, with a get call, a basic get call on
Yeah.
the endpoint.
Yeah.
each provider and partner need to have this endpoint. So this endpoint, we create a Java container that create a thread who call regularity each endpoint to be sure that enable. So this is a good point to be sure that all people that we can contact are up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have 10 orders to push, but they don't respond, that you wait the time out. But 10 orders wait, when we see to the fermentation, you create the job, fade, restart, fade, restart, and you pull our job, grow slowly.
Yeah.
And after 2 days, you have 1,000 million job. So it's really important to have the sanity of all people around you.
And the disabled daytime, you set up a default, for example, you ping an endpoint and one response, and how decide, okay, this endpoint is not working, I disable it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours. It depends, or let's say disable for an hour, let's check in an hour, what happens.
It depends of the requirement of the kind of API you're calling. It's very production important. You might have to wait only 1 hour before reactivating and testing it again. If it's something not so important, you can wait 6 to 1 day, 6 hours to 1 day, because having it failing can crash all other providers, because 10 seconds to wait for a job is very, very big time. So it depends on the criticality of the API.
No one question. It's okay for this point. It's a big subject. Okay. If it's okay, I think this is a ticket of Nicolas. I will create a bulk backup and clean up data to avoid 1 million old entity records.
Can you say it again, please?
Sorry?
Can you repeat the ticket?
Yeah, now already. Okay. So, how you create bulk backup and clean up data to avoid that after a couple of years you will have millions and millions of records in the entities. So we already think about it, but we do not know if the solution are good. For example, one idea could be that if I have, for example, the accounting tables, I have to set up a script, an external script that maybe or drops all the foreign keys, check the dates and delete all after a specific date, or we have to delete in the correct order all the related entity, and after at the end you delete the specific record. I don't know if there are other methods to delete record in Ofbiz to clean data, or we are around these two methods.
What we did before, we tried to keep only 2 or 3 years of history.
Okay.
So the method that used is I take the orders, I took the list of the order that we need to delete. We keep the orders ID on temp table, and after I delete all related data from the order IDs, and after push the order ID out. Generally, when you take the order IDs, you have
You have a lot of relationship.
Exactly, you have many relations. So the vision is we take the most object that we need to be delete the relation, and after we delete around before delete it directly.
So you do not touch the foreign keys, for example.
Yeah,
Okay.
we don't touch the foreign keys like that, and just before do that, we back up the database to be sure to can come back on the 5-6 years before.
There is a script that we need
Tu veux le partager ou pas?
Tu n'es pas déjà en train de partager?
Non, j'ai arrêté.
Okay.
Pour éviter de partager n'importe quoi.
Can you maybe share what's the use case or which data do you want to delete?
The use case is, for example, we have in our legacy ERP, we have company that uses our legacy ERP since 20 years. And for example, inventory movement are usually very huge in volumes. And for example, it's a mainframe, so we have not too much foreign key, so it's easier because you can copy completely the table and then drop everything without too much concerns. But in Ofbiz this is not possible because inventory items are related to a bunch of other entities, and inventory item during time can grow up a lot, especially if you have huge catalogs with a lot of movements. And and if you think this related to also COGS calculation, cost of goods sold calculation, can be a very bad performance issue, can cause very bad performance, because there is for example, one of the method of the COGS calculation is inventory item average cost, that basically sum up the unit cost of each inventory item and calculates the average. And this obviously the process grows up in time as with the inventory item table. So and for example, we have, for example, orders is the same, product is the same. We don't care to keep product of 20 years ago. And at some time we have to make a backup, because maybe those data can be always be read by someone in some cases. For example, if there are law issues with justice issue, the data should be there, because judges have to be they have to be readable data, so we cannot delete and make them disappear completely. So we have to backup them. And those are the cases. I mentioned, for example, accounting transaction entities that are related also to inventory item can grow up in time to very huge numbers. Inventory items, orders, for example, debtor item, as usual, the tables, catalog also is another table. And we are going to use manufacturing. So, for example, work effort. There will be a lot of work effort for us to manufacture products, and all this kind of entity. They have a huge probability to grow up very fast. And we have to think a way to every season, every 2 seasons, every 2 years, I don't know, to keep the size of the database lean.
Well, I actually had a similar case with yours regarding the inventory data and stock data, because for the coffee shops that use my program, we sell many coffees each day, and so basically each time we sell a coffee, we transform the raw materials into the final product, which is the coffee. And basically I have like 4 raw materials for coffee plus the sale line. I have 5 lines for each sale. So what I did is I consolidate the lines each day. So for example, if I sell 10 coffee each day, then I don't have 10 lines with each coffee. I just have 1 line with 10 coffees at the end of the day, and the same for raw materials.
Is the inventory item non-serialized type?
Yeah, it's not serialized.
Yeah, you could.
So
this is true, and this is our approach also. But think about a fashion company has maybe 100 of raw materials and 100 or 1,000 like Decathlon of finished good, and each finished good has its own inventory. And even if you consolidate, the volume is large. So
maybe for all the data you could consolidate like yearly instead of daily. Increase the period.
It's a possibility, yes. But at one point in the year we have to do something like that, because also consolidating, yes, but each, for example, since fashion company are seasonal, each 6 months they load new catalogs with new raw materials, maybe new features, and you have always you add new raw materials, new product, and also if you consolidate, at a certain point it will be difficult to handle all that volume of data. Also considering that we will use a multi-tenant environment, so we have multiple databases, and the machine should be very huge to keep everything. And yes, I think that at a certain point we have anyway go to or this way or drop the foreign key or something like that, but we have to make a copy and drop what is not more needed, I think.
In general case, forget the history, it's not good for the societies, but in this case,
I think you can do a mix of both things. You talk about COX, where you need data from long past to calculate something. You can, when you do the purge, do the collection, inventory time, you calculate the medium cost and the weight of this cost to be stored. So when you clean all the database, you only keep the total for this item of the weight and the median cost. So you can continue to apply your calculation with the latest. You can make the most of the.
Okay. Yeah. So when you arrive at the point to delete, you calculate at that point the total of what you need and store the total, then continue from that point.
yeah, that's how accounting works, because you have a month closing, and then you do the total for the month, and then that total goes to the next month as a starting point. And you start from there.
And to check all the foreign keys, for example, to avoid to delete one record, see, oh, there is a foreign key, delete another record, oh, there is another foreign key, so you proceed with test and try.
Yeah.
Did you use some specific tools?
I don't know if you can ask a little bit to have the answer completely, but I have the script, the result of the work done from one of my colleagues, which is very strong into databases, and you can see his process. He described it creating two temporary tables, and we start content detected, okay, and we delete other content. So first we delete the. Yeah, I don't know if I can. Yeah. Yeah, we delete first the one with the constraint, and then after. And if we go to the scripts, so we remove it's not a file or table, we create the purge table to store the primary keys of the things we want to delete. So order, communication event, cust requests, order contents, order emails, order header work efforts, order adjustment, shipment. Okay. And after that, you can see it's French, but do not delete is not generated dynamically. I wonder if you didn't hit on the hard way. I don't know if you.
I read that. He explained to me that he was able to find the relationship just looking at the schema of the database. And so we could find which table you had to delete before deleting the main entity.
Yeah. And so you can see there is a lot of things to delete in the good order. A lot.
How much time it takes to run?
If I remember well, it took
This task.
Yeah.
For this script.
This script.
for the first script, it was something like 6 hours. We did it on the Sunday, and after we do a second script to
I don't remember, sorry.
No, but the first script is delete, the second script is to, I don't remember the word.
To index.
Yeah, reindex the database and
Background.
backup.
We run some background to be realize all the database after the delete. Because we use PostgreSQL, and when you realize a big
it's good to say to Postgres reanalyze to be keep your analyze up to date. So it will index if you need it. He recreates 3 analyzers to find the data.
Okay.
So the Falcon full that we clean really that we apply to the deletion of the real data. This one is very long and it takes 12 hours or something.
Yeah. It's important if you want to keep your database performance high.
Thank you.
There is an auto version system when the daily life of the database, and this one you force the thing the table to be cleaned. But the issue with that is that the table is locked during the version, so it might cause some trouble if someone on the system is trying to create a new thing to the table.
But during this operation, the system should be shut down. The user should not operate.
It's better.
Yeah. It's better or don't shut down, but freeze a period. When we run this, we alert that it's a freeze period. So typically you can read but not create the time that the database slim.
Okay.
In my project, we do quite the same, but with Java and services. We have a service to find all inventory items. It's about stock entities mostly. We have a service to find all the inventory items to purge. We can give a date, just say, just keep 3 months. And we populate a temporary table, and then we start another job asynchronously to delete the entities, and we have a Java method to delete first the related entities. It was very trial and error. Delete, oh no, okay. Delete, okay, oh no.
And this Java program is scheduled in the jobs, in the
Yes.
job scheduler inside
Yes.
Office.
We don't use it often, we should, but we're a bit scared, so we go slowly.
Okay. So this is an external script that runs by itself.
It's a manually run by ourselves. And it's scary also.
Yes, I know.
When you delete some data, be sure to make your snapshot, to try to mount it again, to be sure everything is there. And
Yeah. And then delete.
And try.
I'm not an expert in Postgres, but I know you can partition your tables. You can say to Postgres, never check what is below this date, so you don't consider it. So when you do a select something from something, Postgres will just ignore all data. It seems to be very powerful. Don't try it. It's an alternative
To delete
to
everything.
read purge.
Okay. And this kind of script never ever stuck after 6 hours and you weren't able to understand, okay, is going on or is everything blocked? What I should do? Should I perform Ctrl C and stop everything? Or just wait another 6 hours?
It's not a problem because it's a reusable script and you commit at the end or you roll back at the end. So if you can't say it because I forgot something, the snapshot is not good, something like that, at the end of the screen you have the choice to roll back or commit.
Okay.
So and if it's blocked in the middle, Control C and roll back, so it's okay.
Yes.
So no problem.
And after, typically we run this in PSQL, so each operation is linked. It's rarely that we have 6 hours without information of the system. So each table, the information comes. In general, 1 hour for a table is really the max.
Okay.
Thanks, Sam. Yep. We can close this subject.
Yeah, I think so.
Coffee break. What?
Yeah, it's a moment that we have.
Okay, we can restart after this break. The next tickets, what is one thing Ofbiz should do to improve developer experience?
Yeah, this is a brainstorm.
Yes, you have 3 hours. So,
How about a nice baby? Okay, so I think what we're doing here is, I think we could take a structured approach if you want. For example, we could start listing all of the problems that we have with Ofbiz as developers, and then we could maybe find the main issue, the common issue between all of these, and then try to find a way to fix that. I guess would be a good approach.
you have the pen just behind you.
Yeah. So I guess everybody could list their own problems in here, and we'll see how we could get to the main issue point.
Write on paper or?
You can use sticky notes if you want. I think we could fit more of them.
Generic Ofbiz problem.
These problems as developers, yeah. The problems that you face in day-to-day working with Ofbiz.
Lack of documentation. I think it's a common
that's a
point
big one.
for everyone.
Yeah.
Another issue that I write and I see.
You use post-it or the
Like,
directly
like you want.
later?
there are quite the same number of ticket issue ticket and topic ticket. Okay. Okay, we should stop talking about the topics and
You should have started with the product.
Apache Office issue date. We should make a specific event only for issues.
Could be nice.
It's okay. So we have stack of documentation.
Wait. Florian has 3 new tickets.
Stop it.
No.
Don't put the ticket.
Beginners to understand. Yeah, duplicated efforts. How to understand the logic behind services. Why was the service created? How should it work? Okay, again, duplicated services. Strict module dependency. Okay. Poor docs. Tight Tomcat integration. Difficult to upgrade. Service error management in Groovy script. Error management in Groovy script.
Error management and also debug and so on. No, not debugging.
Debugging Groovy
Yes,
script.
debugging.
Yeah.
Debugging is key.
Okay.
Not yet. No. Maybe we
No, no. Yeah.
Yeah. Run service with. Run service with. What is this?
Where?
Run
The way to run a service in script and run a service, so you call the name of the service with and the map.
Oh.
When you run a service like that, if there is an error, it's for an exception.
Yeah.
And it's not return a map. See. So it's kind of the problem. Or the usage is the problem.
Difficult to use for small ERP. Maybe we need Ofbiz Slim. Yeah, okay. Complex data model, not standard UI. REST hidden and poor docs. REST hidden. You're talking about the REST API. Which one is this? REST hidden.
Yeah, because the REST API maybe is a feature to sponsor first. Yeah, for developer. If I think a developer want to approach a new a new approach to Ofbiz, the main things that I want to know is the REST first. Is a REST first environment, because it's really possible with very few effort. But if I take a look to the documentation, if I take a look to the home page, if I think is for maybe marketing reason, I take a look to the home page of Ofbiz. Is a service-oriented REST first framework for building application. This is a slogan, as like a punch. Maybe it's all RESTful, it's okay, but it's okay for us. But
For us,
if I take one developer and go to the homepage of Ofbiz, it's not so clear.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Before yesterday,
Before yesterday we don't have a plugin for IntelliJ. Now the issue is solved.
I don't know what this is.
Yeah, sorry for my. Yeah, it's maybe the monolithic Ofbiz has a monolithic approach. So if maybe for a new developer to approach Ofbiz is very difficult, because there's hundreds of services and hundreds of. It sounds like a old style monolithic framework is very difficult to, and this is the other message, is very difficult to, okay, I take Ofbiz and I want to develop my application, like we do, but if I take Ofbiz, I see there's 600 tables, it's too much for me. I use Spring Boot and I start from scratch. So I think maybe it's
Yeah, but
it's just a provocation. No? I think it's there.
It's a success.
Okay, so if we try to summarize the problem so far, I guess the main issue is poor docs. Can we summarize this as poor documentation and what you said in here? You don't understand things. It's hard to find something when you search for something in the docs. So let's put docs in there.
We both from a user end side
Yeah.
and a developer side. So I'm a user, I want to try to configure a new product.
Yeah, so it's
I-
hard to
It's
understand
hard to
how it
understand
works.
where I have to start, so.
Okay.
And for that,
For the documentation, it's really hard because sometimes the user want to have the documentation for this context where he so configure products is not the same the fashion
Yeah.
like for the manufacturing or like the marketplace.
You want specific information.
Yeah,
maybe there be some.
I agree with you. In my opinion, that's not so important to create. So, as the Ofbiz on page says, is a framework for developer.
Yeah.
I think the end user documentation is not so important, but developer documentation is important.
I think we also need to discuss this when we talk about the future of Ofbiz.
Yeah.
That will be
Yeah.
that topic. Yeah, what's the end user of Ofbiz after all?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have too many interdependencies. Like you said, in Tom, that is integrated too closely.
Yeah,
Dependencies.
Yeah, between modules. Many dependencies between modules. So you have strict module dependency.
For me to understand, it is that is it that Ofbiz has too many dependencies, or is it that Ofbiz inner modules are too much
close
relation
to
to each
couple.
other?
This one, I have to, this one.
I think it's tight coupling, the better name maybe. So tight coupling between Ofbiz modules, like.
Okay, so
Sometimes there is also some redundancy, so one module that needs another module.
Yeah.
And maybe there should be a way to detach a bit each one and another module. Maybe thinking about more like interfaces with some modules, using the services that.
Yeah, for example, I want to use a certain module without it. Like, I just want to use the entity engine with all the services they have, something like that.
Yeah, but right now I think it's very difficult to use only a specific module, or
Yeah.
not impossible right now.
okay, so too monolithic.
Yeah.
So because it's all this tight coupling.
And it's fine because it was born 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, that's what I was telling.
Yeah, actually Eugene had an effort in here to separate the.
I believe yes, something was started recently to try and make it more modular.
Yeah,
It's the works of Eggleston, however,
It didn't work.
it didn't work. The problem is that we need to time to focus and understand what it is because we have not this approach, so we need to learn before.
we are the old guys from the monolithic time, so when we see this kind of contribution,
And it's great, but customer projects where I don't take the time, and we have a lot of also involvement that we start. So
Yeah.
But the Eugene initiative could be a good subject to analyze at the workshop. If one day you can come or somebody can take the relay and
Yeah.
create something good.
Okay. And then we have FTR context inspection. Context inspection to inspect the FTL files.
It was more to know what's in the context when you got the FTL file. Just know what's in there and what you can use. You can print the context, you can print context keys, you can do something like that. But it's,
So you know what's going on in the file.
yes, what's available, what's variable. It's not a big problem.
Yeah.
That
So that's a visibility
when
problem.
something
Yeah.
the context is put into the request attribute as a request attribute, and then injected into the tree marker. When we, for example, do a context dot variable name
Yes.
being pushed into the request as a request attribute. So you can bring the request attribute and think that you are able to see
Okay.
everything, but also the variable of that particular context.
Okay.
I tried once printing
Okay.
all the parameter of the attribute, and I see all the stuff.
Bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have SECA and ECA debugging, which I guess it's hard to understand what happens in the SECA and ECA rules. It's hard to debug them. Okay. Different implementation styles front.
On the front end, you from one screen to another screen. Sometimes you have FTL, sometimes just XML. In the standard screens,
Yeah.
it's
Sometimes you have both.
yes, and it happens you go to a screen, you want to do something, and it's really different from the next one. I think it's because things were built that way.
Yeah, probably.
For another.
Okay. And then old bad code present. Don't give best practice.
yes, it's mine. I think a problem that I saw on Ofbiz is old framework. We have old code, and sometimes some people copy paste the old code. Else we have a better way now to do that. So just in the last months I go to plugin to clean the Groovy and see a lot of bad function, and I remove a lot because it's really a bad way to do, and some new developers don't know how to do, so they copy paste the bad way. So I think a good move is try to clean all the bad code. Oh, it's really huge, but
And give
What
best,
we-
best practices.
yes, because best practice to write it, but you don't implement when you have the code and you say it works, you copy paste and you use it.
Yeah.
And you use it, the bad solution. So
You refer only to clean bad code, so bad written code with bad standards, or also clean maybe we saw that there are services that seem to be duplicated or do quite the same things.
all clean is good.
Yeah.
So all clean is good, but
And how to decide which service has to be kept if there are two similar.
ask just. In the past, I delete some services that I detect that I don't use with old code, so no reason to keep it because some people will try to understand, but it don't work so finally. So sometimes I prefer to clean and slim the code, so make the code is better for the futures. So if we detect duplicate code, we need to understand why, and if we have no reason to do smash one, and if we have good reason, maybe it's the name of the service that's not good. So it's really long work. So
Okay, so then the question is, what is the common theme between all of these problems? Because as far as I see it, the main issue is that it's hard to understand. So the poor docs, the issue is that it's hard to understand because you have poor docs. Tight coupling, it's hard to understand how services work with each other. And then no proper refactoring, it's hard to understand why that code it was written in that way, what should it do, who wrote it, and what is the proper way of writing it. So I guess that's the main issue, that it's hard to understand for us what should we do, this. Hard.
For the proper refactoring, I think that unless we have guidelines or some good habits defined by the community, I think that every dev will write the code at its own manner. So it's difficult to, if you don't have
Guidelines.
a standard that say, okay, I will follow that, or basic example, okay, I have a good written Java class, I know that is a good standard, okay, I try to follow that standard. But in this bunch of classes, Ruby, XML, you don't know, you can face good Java code and bad Java code maybe in the same class because there are two methods written by two different people and you don't know which is good, which is bad if you don't. Maybe you have the experience to understand, okay, this is better than this, I will follow this. But unless we have guidelines of some kind, both for Java, for Ruby, for XML, for free market maybe a bit less because it's more front end, but it's difficult to think about a proper refactoring if anyone is free to write code at its own way.
So there's no standard.
It's difficult to, if there is a standard, it's difficult to extrapolate from the code base, I think.
And I think there is no agreement within the community of what the standard is.
Yeah.
Some who are more active have an idea of the standard, some other have another one. So since we are a community, we need to have an agreement for the standard to make this. The community has no standard defined today. And
so best practice on the check style structures.
only think here are the tools.
Yeah.
The check style conduct.
But they are more styling, so indentation, something like that, but on the correct way to write code.
I'm a new guy, so when you check and you have a conflict with my code and some other, the truth is me. No,
Yeah.
just I think there are different ways to have a good code. So the first is try to be slim the code as possible, and after don't hesitate to ask for a remark because when you write code with no standard, some people have the habit to write code and each code. So when they check your code, we can quickly add some remark. And the remark uninteresting only if it's understood by the other side. If it just to say, okay, I'm the screw and not you, no interest. If I explain, I prefer that you write like this because when I read is slim and I can quickly understand. You understand that, you can reproduce after. It's the reason that I explained I'm not happy when I go on the old or new code with bad practice because it's hard to read and some people copy because they want to do good, but if we start with a bad solution, we finish with a bad solution.
So if we set a standard that everybody should follow, would it then solve the problems? Because if, for example, as you say, I have a standard way of creating products, then I have the guide in there and everybody follows that guide, be it an end user or a developer. And then if I need some customizations, then I know what customization I need to do based on the standard.
Yeah, but it's quite difficult to define what is.
I think what is possible is define technical standards.
Yeah, technical standard, yes, but to create a product
To create a product is not technical.
is not a technical standard.
But there can be some, you can just explain, not for a specific business, for example, for a fashion business, we create product like that, no, but you can explain, okay, you can create a product, the product can have different types, and if you want to associate some features, you have to do like that, then you have to create variants, you can do like that, some general, a general manual to guide the user. Then each user, once you explain to him the functionality, it uses specialized for his business.
Yeah, but how you can achieve this?
For example, okay, you have product, for example, what are features? Explain to a new user what are features. The first time I put my hand into Ofbiz, I didn't know anything. I go to the product and I see 20, 30 tabs and I don't know anything about that, so I had to try each one to understand what happens.
Yeah.
So then if we have a standard for beginners, quick starts, like if you want to develop Ofbiz, follow these steps, this is a beginner guide.
But we are jumping between technical standard and code and service and a typical user interface issue. We have to define if you want to talk about standard code and the technical way, or that Giulio says is I'm the user. He talk about the user and a lot of tabs and the user doesn't.
Here about the integrator side, who does not know about the data model, etc. So product, what is the feature, what is user? The integrator asks himself those questions if he is a newcomer for the project. So for me, it's hard to talk about technical without having an example, and it's hard to have an example without talking about technical. Both are related, and we already talk about this idea to select one domain, very little, very simple one, to be a mini application that serves on a purpose to how to build a mini application with best practice, with something like that. So you can decide to say I want to manage applications that allow me to create a product with an image, with one feature or two, with but not too far, only
basic examples.
Some features with Java services, with Ruby services, with different best practice, and to ensure that this part is set as an example of good quality of of our standards. We might do something like that.
Yeah, my idea that I brought in a post-it is creating something like a Slim distribution with only 5 services, one screen, one dummy entity, and a simple template application with meaning.
You see the plugin example?
Yeah.
It's something like that. Plugin example is an entity that is example with example item, and you can create an example, create an example item, have the screen in that.
Yeah.
And it's already the case, but it's only technical. But,
Yeah.
Yes, that's a thing. But this one is in plugin, not maintained, very old, etc.
Yeah.
So it's an idea to develop something that show the best standards, and we need to be sure that during the life of Apache Ofbiz, to maintain those standards within this mini application. Yeah.
Yeah, so set a set of standards. It could also apply on the technical side. If I want to create a screen, how do I do it? I use FTR, I use XML,
Yeah,
which is the best practice.
if you have this mini application standard with all the feature of the, like we can see in every other UI or UX React, for example, ready start, quick view, an application like that.
And within the code of this application, you can have description as a comment saying you need to use screen because these screens are very simple, basic style. You need to use FTL because you want to import JavaScript specific map or something like which is more complicated, and to give direction why you need to use this screen or why you need to use this technology or why to etc. So it's not documentation, and like we say, we are very bad at documentation, and the job we do is the code is the documentation, you see.
Yeah.
Because it's what we are maintaining. We are coders, and documentation is pretty hard to.
Yeah, so then I guess we need clean quality code and a set of best practices.
Yeah.
So then the code serves documents, and the best practices are for that shows you the user end side, I guess. A simple example.
Simple example with all the features. So in the screen we can use these 10 components and we create the sample application with the 10 components. We create like the parent store in J288, a simple example with all the functionality, all the basic functionality. So if a new user wants to create a small application for everything, the user are able to copy and paste and create your own entity and your own screen, copying the good quote with a good comment. Yeah.
Yeah, so modularity.
Yeah.
The e-commerce, we have an e-commerce plugin.
Yes.
It's old, it's not
It's
new.
really old.
Okay.
Charles tried to update it with the t-shirt store. A year and a half ago, I think.
Seems that we are talking about that.
Yeah.
Just building a new e-commerce.
The big problems of this is we are not an editor, so it takes time. We need to understand that it for the communication of all of them, but we have the production side to maintain or to develop, and this time we need to understand it's expensive for us. It's the reason that it not grow at this time, the e-commerce.
But the e-commerce plugin, okay, it's all the e-commerce application, okay, it's good. But when we create an e-commerce application, we create an e-commerce application from scratch because we have to use only few possibilities. If you take a look on the e-commerce application, you can see the product configuration, and the bar with a lot of functionality. And for us, when I start creating something, is very useful because in a simple application you can see all the possibility of the e-commerce application, and maybe after you catch only one or two possibility, but is not possible in my idea create a standard e-commerce application with so if you create a clean user interface, a minimal user interface, you have to cut a lot of functionality. If you put a lot of functionality, you create a messy application because it's not ready to use.
Yeah.
The idea was to introduce a way to produce a very simple first step of an e-commerce site very quickly, only using data.
Okay.
So with that, if we manage to contribute this, you will see there is little code, a lot of data, and push it, and you have an e-commerce working. Very simple, but not replacing the old one.
Okay.
Just an instance to be more selective for new integrators. The e-commerce is not these ugly things, but it can be shiny, simple, and how do we do that? And they have the example.
Yeah, maybe with not a lot of functionality,
Yeah.
but running after.
With a big alert, Ofbiz is better than this.
Yes, I guess this is also a big problem. Like, should we go the simple way, the simple UI, or should we show all the features? Then it gets complicated. It's
Yeah.
not simple anymore.
We can create, so we create simple e-commerce application. It is not a problem for me to take one, cut off all the logo, the company logo and so on, and put not in the e-commerce application, but maybe in an e-commerce minimal, I don't know, e-commerce minimal application. So we have to maintain, we have to have all the e-commerce application with all the possibility, but also a minimal e-commerce configuration, a minimal e-commerce application. Is if you think it's useful, I can do that.
So I think
Is a Bootstrap 5 application, is a modern application like we see yesterday, which is specific for fashion, obviously, so it's quite strange to.
If we go on this way, I think we need to organize this to put the vision, the RESTful vision that you said.
Yeah,
So have the documentation to how do RESTful easily with Ofbiz, minimal e-commerce with RESTful addresses.
Yeah.
And like this, we feel some different problems.
Yeah.
And,
I take in charge to create this minimal e-commerce application. If you agree, not a problem. Because I simple take one and cut off something. Yeah.
and we can help you to grow up.
Yeah.
I think.
Could be a new example in the plugin example repository.
Yeah. We suggest to the community, we can suggest to the community to have a new modules, new plugin on the Ofbiz plugin, like doing a simple e-commerce.
Yeah, it's a simple, it's a Shopify-like application, so if a final user can go to demo and see the e-commerce, it's wow, it's not so bad. But the final user, but if a developer need to see all the functionality is not the good choice.
I'm trying to do that into the store.
Is the reason that we can help Nikolai to
But I don't remember why he didn't manage to push it.
the time.
It was very well done with interesting data and a lot of meetings.
did somebody uses Ofbiz out of the box without any customizations?
Sorry, can you repeat?
If somebody uses Ofbiz out of the box without any customizations.
I think nobody.
So basically everybody personalizes it for his own use case.
is the minimal e-commerce site is just for first approach.
Yeah.
And after, when you take a look on Ofbiz, we need to have the clean code as possible to help the people to understand how to do quickly and the good way. So I think it's a global vision. But
So I guess this is the way we should go, the simple approach. Not try to put all the features in there, but just present a simple case. This is how to use it. And then if you want multiple features, then you can go in the docs and read about them, or you look at the code. And so everybody maintains this simple
in
feature.
my mind, we can easily explain. If you want a simple example, go to minimal e-commerce. If you want multiple features, but it's ugly because we have a lot of features, go to the e-commerce.
You can see a good UI for final user, and you have a good sample application for developer. It's two different purposes. Two very different purposes.
The one for developers, you're talking about the current e-commerce plugin, which is more complex.
I never start from e-commerce. We start from scratch with a new e-commerce application, not copying and paste the sample e-commerce application that is as used in Ofbiz. But our e-commerce application, fully functional as you see yesterday, is we don't use new entities, we don't use strange services, we use the out-of-the-box feature. We create obviously new screen, some new services, but
So I guess the road we should take, that all this should be simple and easy to personalize for everybody.
yeah.
Simple to understand without all the doc mess in there, and then easy to personalize. So I guess that would pretty much solve most of these problems in here.
Yeah, but I think only about e-commerce application, because for the real application it's quite difficult to create a minimal screen. If you create a minimal screen of product,
we have a beginning start by Android system with a setup component. But after you create a product store or a product and a party group, you need to know where you want to do, because manage a store, shop is not the same like manage manufacturing.
yeah, because if you think about SAP or JD Edwards or other, there's not the ready to use demo or ready to use implementation. But if you think about Shopify, WooCommerce or something like that, is so two different sides of the same project or product. So
we might try to find some things that we as human can use on our daily basis. As an example of product, I don't know, so managing my shopping list, adding a little web app, adding some item of the gizmo and demo data into shopping list, and doing something like that, to have something that is not professional but talks to human.
Yeah.
So finding an example, accessible example without knowing the specifics of any factory or other type of entity.
yeah, and if you add a link on the website, so back office demo, e-commerce demo, minimal e-commerce demo, this can be useful, because if I click e-commerce demo now, for a final user, it's quite crazy to see this is not an e-commerce application, it is a demo for developer.
Actually, these are different domains. So if you want
Yeah.
to do manufacturing, there is the manufacturing beginner guide, the book. You have the Ofbiz introduction guide, which presents basically the starting point, how to configure Ofbiz.
Yeah, but it's quite my thought. If you talk of it as an ERP, like JD Edwards or SAP, it's quite difficult to create a simple way to use a complete ERP or configure a product that is different from company to company to business case to business case. It's quite. I think it's quite impossible to create a guideline for that.
Yeah, so you basically use a modular approach.
We can imagine to create a simple enterprise with a e-commerce site and factory with a gizmo model, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
What about
I propose e-commerce because for me it's not a lot of work because I have only to cut things. I have to create from stuff. So
Because if we want to have a simple application to manage something like a factory, or we need to cut all the standard screen. And this is a 1 or 2 months of work.
Yeah.
Or maybe really simple. We can do on 1 week for this if it's really simple.
So a low effort solution is to create, as we talked before, a simple application with all the features, with the screen and the services in 2 entities, okay? And the new e-commerce minimal application. With this approach, we can create something better for developer and also for user with a limited effort.
With Yashan improvement, my last talk, I not realize at this time. I explained how quite dynamic interface.
Okay.
So we can do that quickly.
Okay.
In 1 day we can have
okay, great.
interface with 2 entities without problems. And with the best practice at this time that we implement. So we can think about
See, also for me is 2 or 3 days of work to take the fashion application, cut off all the sizes and color because it's quite strange and cut off all the CSS logo and clean the code with strange things like geolocalization and other external library and keep clean the code with the Bootstrap 5 and simple and minimal. So we have to cut off also payment gateway, customized payment gateway, all this stuff, okay, but I think it's in 2-3 days of work I can do that without problem.
And you have no conflict with data of the standard e-commerce?
No, if I cut some strange things, no, there's no conflict.
Okay.
So that will be the e-commerce problem solved if you do the simple thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So what if we also standardize the docs based on domains? Like for example, you have an e-commerce section. This is the simple demo. This is how to use it. And then we do the same things for other ones, like manufacturing. Here is all the manufacturing information in this section. Like organize the docs based on domains, on the business domains.
There are a lot of domains.
I think is
I just imagine
is a
So
bit
because
careful.
it's quite strange because everyone take Ofbiz and customize it for the specific domain. So I know some module and I know what I do with this module, but I'm not sure what the module can do for other people. Yeah.
So that means that the service layer is personalized for each one, and basically you just use the entity layer then.
A good practice is have the standard services of this the most functional possible.
Yeah.
And after you change your data, you create your business logic service that call only functional services with specific data. This is a good way because you don't touch the services that in general work well, and your business layer manage only your business and you isolate your code.
Yeah.
So I think if we create a small application, we need to implement this as example. So you create your services, you put your logical, and you call Ofbiz.
Yeah, you are talking about two different kinds of services, like a standard service in the lower layer and business-related service on the top layer.
Yeah.
Usually the top layer services are customized and
so
the low level.
basically just keep the universal data model and universal services in Ofbiz, and then create a top business layer on top of those.
Like a class path. Something like that.
Yeah.
And the other good way is an improvement in the service engine that I think but never implement. We don't know where come from a services. When you call a service, you don't know if it's specific services or customized services or the standard services.
You want to add the scope to job samples?
The scope, but or the package name on the services by Java class.
Yeah, the package.
Yeah, I think I think it on it, but I didn't implement it. I detect it needs something on the service engine. But sure, the best practice to share is use service, never call entity directly or really for the specific case.
Technical cleaning or something like that. So you can do the network or by condition or by connection to stuff. But services are way to go.
Okay. So then if we agree...
Yeah, this two layer of service is very effective, a simple way to achieve a goal of separate a standard solid core logic tight but decoupled with the standard data model.
Yeah.
And upper level of services related to specific business. I think is a good standard, is a good best practice.
Okay, so can we agree then on the first standard that we should keep the entity and service layer simple and universal, and just keep business customizations personally for each one?
If you have more time, I can create a talk about this.
So, and how we can differentiate services from the standard to customized, for example?
You prefix.
With the prefix.
At this time, we have just this solution.
Okay.
Because if we create party roles and you call create party roles,
Yeah.
if you change just one letter, you don't know if it's a standard of biz or your specific. It's the reason that I explained that they're missing the package name of the service.
Yeah.
So the CRUD are basic operations, no?
Yeah.
So if you have like a name, create party, that's a basic service.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of business. There's
Yes,
also
but
a lot of not.
if you have services, you create a great customized product. So, example,
Yeah.
you know that is your services, but if a new developer arrives, you don't know that it's not a standard service or a specific service. In this case, by example, we create some prefix like the name of the project on the front of on the prefix of each services. Like this, we know on the service engine that all this service is a customized service.
But the create should have the entity name in there, so party role is the entity name.
Yeah, for example, if I create a new party name for the service, my project is I create just my service like this.
My project create party.
This is the name of my service. Generally, we put just acronyms like this, and I know directly on the code, MP create party is not the standard service.
It was different from the standard create party.
Yes, but I know also behind, in general, we call create party service.
At the end, yes.
Yes.
And why do you need a different service to create the party? Because if you create
Because-
the party, you just pass the parameter.
Because on create party, I have a layer with a customized test value.
You add a specific kind of party identification for your project. You might need to create an address a certain way, or just I don't know the form that has been filled. You will create party for your project, and you need to create specific things before the standard parties.
So if you go on the layer approach, then your specialized create party service would just call the create party, universal create party service, and then
At some point, yes.
do other stuff below.
You prepare some data and
Just a layer on top.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
not create party because create party is, don't need to call, but the create party group or create person.
so it's the layer approach.
Yeah. And this works really fine. On a lot of projects we have, it's easy to maintain, easy to understand what the service do. Easy to migrate, yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. So we should basically keep just the universal services and not try to do everything inside out of the box of this. Give up on the business logic. I think.
So we are talking about the best practices, not modify the core if possible. That's why we are coming here. So, and where do these best practices will be documented?
On the wiki.
Yeah.
I don't know another place.
So the implementation of simple application is not the only solution. We need to have somewhere.
So we need a place where somebody can know about it,
Yeah.
where we keep these things.
I don't know if on the wiki we have a documentation how create your customized application.
There is a tutorial for plugin, I
Yeah.
think, to create a plugin.
Yeah, there are some tutorials here.
No.
Of course.
Yeah, so
After my talk, of course.
how can we make sure that everybody respects the standards, the best practices?
We can start the service.
Yes, to the job.
But to make sure, besides the check style task on build, but it seems a bit restrictive. To
That's just for code style, I guess.
Sorry?
That's for code style, you could do that.
Yeah, but I imagine you could add a rule on the check style that it is a bit restrictive, but that checks no new XML screens or XML screen elements has been added in files that are not compound. But I don't think it is a good solution at all.
No. No, because there's just a simple case is to send an email on the mailing list and just try to make everybody agree to the standards. We should keep a layered approach.
Yes.
And then just don't push personalized business logic in the main repo. Just keep universal services and data in there.
And explaining why it's a best practice.
Yeah.
To allow easier update of the release when your projects are live.
Yeah, in order to achieve simple personalization. Okay, so could we start there then? Alright. I guess that's the first step. And then we'll go from there.
Can we make a little sum up of the different steps we have?
Yeah. Okay, so we agreed on the best practices, no?
Yeah.
And I guess the first one we have is keep a layered approach. How should we call it? Layered approach.
Nice. Yeah.
Keep universal data model and universal services in all Ofbiz repo. Yeah, I'm just gonna write this. Keep universal data model and services. And then add personalizations as another layer. Without modifying the core code.
It's an interesting case when the universal code doesn't work as we want.
Yeah.
Sometimes this indicates that we need to reanalyze the universal code and improve it.
Yeah, so then I guess we just need to agree on one universal code and keep that version, and everyone just modifies it. Or I guess if it's not standard, then it's not part of the core layer. It should be a plugin, I guess.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. So then I think we should nail this and then decide on a place where to keep the standards. It might be in the wiki.
Yeah.
Okay. Any additions here?
The rules, best practice.
Fine.
personally, for me, the layered approach would work pretty well. If I have a simple core layer, I can do my customizations
I think we can put another like this, keep care on your naming.
Well, we could put that in the wiki.
Mm.
Why was the naming standard? I guess we should just have a section, a simple section on the wiki with best practices, and then we list them in there. So, for example, if I want to know what are the best practices in Ofbiz, I just go there. And this is what everybody should respect.
Yeah.
We could maybe even put it in the introduction guide or somewhere where everybody sees it.
And something I'm not sure we discussed about is the target of the Apache Ofbiz. In my way, in my opinion, it's a product for integrators.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's also in the discussion about Ofbiz future. I think we need to discuss that as well.
and it's very related to the best practice. So best practice of development, the best practice for developers, for integrators.
Yeah.
So that's why it's kind of related.
Yeah, well, I don't think we can answer that. What are the best practices if we don't know what is the user? What is the user of Ofbiz?
Yeah.
What is it intended for?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so I think we should decide on that as well. So maybe we can continue with that topic. If you want.
Yeah.
Okay. So we need to meet for last then. Let me just make some space in here. Or maybe you want to take a picture?
Yeah.
Give them.
Picture. I can see.
And then we clean it.
I will try to take a picture of the tickets just for record it.
Thank you. So we continue with the next post-it. Nicolas, I guess it's yours about who use accounting. Google.
Who's accounting a double ledger?
Ledger, okay.
Okay, and how you integrate external accounting like invoice posting or something like that?
Yes.
But I think nobody used this feature.
Yeah.
Topic closed.
No.
Yeah, accounting.
We
Nobody use accounting.
we are using accounting in it, but our own one, which was developed with our fork a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so it's different from the Ofbiz trunk one, so not very important
Yeah.
for this subject. No,
No,
I have no experience with accounting. I try to remember any project, but okay. So it's finished.